Wait, what does that have to do with me? I stammered, my voice shaky. Mrs. Peterson stepped forward, clutching a worn photograph in her trembling hands. "Is this the girl you saw tonight?" she asked, her eyes filled with hope and dread. I glanced at the picture and froze. It was her Samra, or rather Mary. The same pale skin, haunting eyes, and long, dark hair. "Yes, but she said her name was Samra," I whispered, the words catching in my throat. "She wasn't normal. I stopped myself, unsure how to describe the horrifying transformation I had witnessed. The couple exchanged a look, their expressions darkening. "That's impossible," Mr. Peterson said grimly. "Mary drowned in the river 5 years ago." My blood ran cold. "No," I muttered, shaking my head. "I saw her. She was in my car. She peeled off her skin." "How could she?" The police officer cut me off, his tone firm but uneasy. "Mr. Miller, perhaps you're mistaken. It's late, and you've had a long night. Let's get your car checked out, and we'll take it from there." I followed them reluctantly, my legs like jelly. When we reached the car, I couldn't help but scan the area for any sign of her. The passenger seat was pristine, devoid of any blood or evidence of the nightmare I had experienced. The smell was gone too, replaced by the faint scent of leather upholstery. It was as if she had never been there. "This doesn't make sense," I muttered. "I know what I saw." The officer sighed and nodded toward the Petersons. "We'll file a report, but there's nothing here to investigate for now. You should go home, Mr. Miller." I wanted to argue, to scream that they were wrong, but I didn't. Exhaustion weighed heavily on me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd never find the answers I was looking for. When I finally got home, the house felt different, colder, darker, almost oppressive. I locked the door behind me and checked every window, every shadowed corner, half expecting to see her standing there, watching me. But there was nothing. The events of the night played over and over in my mind as I sat on the edge of my bed, too shaken to sleep. Who or what had I let into my car? And why did the Petersons believe their dead daughter was somehow involved? I finally drifted off as the first light of dawn crept through the curtains. My sleep was restless, plagued by vivid nightmares. I saw her face, her peeling skin, the exposed muscle, the sinister smile. Her laughter echoed in my ears, and I jolted awake, gasping for air. The next morning, I resolved to dig deeper. If Mary had drowned 5 years ago, why had she appeared to me now? And what did she mean by her parents keeping her locked in the attic? I called in sick to work and started researching. The Peterson story was tragic, but straightforward, or so it seemed. Mary had disappeared while walking home from school. A week later, her body was discovered in the river. The case was ruled an accidental drowning, though some locals whispered about strange circumstances. They claimed Mary's body had been unusually well preserved, despite being in the water for days. As I delved deeper, I stumbled across an old forum discussing local legends. One post caught my attention: the curse of Hollow Creek Bridge. They say if you see her on Halloween night, she'll follow you home. Mary Peterson drowned there, but she's not at rest. She seeks revenge on those who cross her path. The post sent a shiver down my spine. I had crossed Hollow Creek Bridge that night. Was it a coincidence, or had I unknowingly invited something into my life? That evening, as darkness fell, I felt a growing sense of unease. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind outside felt magnified. I tried to distract myself with work, but my thoughts kept drifting back to her. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. Hesitantly, I answered. A soft, familiar voice spoke. "Did you enjoy my magic trick?" My heart stopped. "Who is this?" I demanded, though I already knew. She laughed, the sound chilling. "You know who I am. Don't pretend you don't." "This isn't funny," I snapped, my voice trembling. "What do you want from me?" "I told you, didn't I?" she said, her tone playful yet menacing. "Halloween is my favorite night, but it's more than that. It's the only night I can leave the river. You gave me a ride, so now we're connected." "Connected? What does that mean?" I asked, my hands gripping the phone so tightly they hurt. "You'll find out soon enough," she said before the line went dead. The days that followed were a blur of paranoia and sleepless nights. I started seeing her everywhere, in the reflection of my car window, in the dark corners of my office, even in my dreams. She never spoke, just watched with that same haunting smile. I began to lose my grip on reality. Was she real, or was my mind playing tricks on me? The distinction blurred with each passing day. One night, I found myself back at Hollow Creek Bridge. I wasn't sure why I had come. Perhaps I was seeking answers, or perhaps I was drawn there by something beyond my control. The air was thick with fog, and the water below was eerily still. "Samra," I called out, my voice echoing into the void. "Or Mary, or whoever you are. What do you want from me?" For a moment, there was silence. Then she appeared, emerging from the shadows like a phantom. Her tattered dress clung to her skeletal frame, and her eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight. "You brought me back," she said softly. "Now you must take my place." "What are you talking about?" I asked, stepping back instinctively. "I can't rest until someone else takes my spot," she explained, her voice devoid of emotion. "The curse demands it." "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "This isn't real. It can't be." She moved closer, her footsteps silent despite the gravel beneath her. "You saw me that night because you were chosen. It's your turn now." I turned to run, but the bridge seemed to stretch endlessly in both directions. Her laughter surrounded me, and before I knew it, she was upon me, her cold, skeletal hands gripping my shoulders. The last thing I heard before everything went black was her whispering in my ear, Thank you for setting me free." When I woke up, I was lying on the edge of the river, the water lapping at my feet. The bridge was gone, replaced by a quiet expanse of foggy wilderness. My body felt different, heavier, slower, as if it didn't quite belong to me. I looked down at my reflection in the water and screamed. My face was pale and sunken, my skin peeling away like hers had been. I had taken her place. The autumn air was crisp, carrying with it the faint scent of decaying leaves and the subtle sweetness of carved pumpkins sitting on porches. Halloween night was always a spectacle in our small town, with children darting from house to house, their laughter and shouts blending into the symphony of the evening. The streets were alive with glowing jack-o'-lanterns, gory decorations, and the occasional scream from a haunted house. I had always loved Halloween. It was a night of harmless fun, a time when people embraced the thrill of fear, knowing it was all make-believe. Or so I thought. When I met Mary, it was at the bus stop near the edge of town. She stood out immediately, her long, tangled black hair cascading over her face, and her pale, almost ghostly skin illuminated by the dim streetlight. She wore a white dress that looked as if it had been pulled from the depths of an attic, tattered and stained. But it was her eyes that unnerved me the most, wide, unblinking, and filled with an intensity that seemed to pierce right through me. "Nice costume," I had said, trying to be friendly. She tilted her head slightly, her lips curling into a faint, almost sinister smile. "It's not a costume." I laughed nervously, unsure of how to respond. "Well, you really nailed the creepy vibe," I added, taking a step back. There was something about her that made me uneasy, though I couldn't quite put my finger on it. "Do you believe in ghosts?" she asked suddenly, her voice soft yet chilling. The question caught me off guard. I guess not," I replied. "Why?" She stepped closer, her head tilting again. "You should. Some ghosts aren't dead. Some are just lost." Her words sent a shiver down my spine. I mumbled an excuse and hurried away, glancing over my shoulder to see her still standing there, watching me. That encounter lingered in my mind for the rest of the evening. As I handed out candy to trick-or-treaters, I couldn't shake the image of her haunting smile and those piercing eyes. Who was she? And what had she meant by "some ghosts aren't dead"? The next morning, the town was abuzz with rumors. A young woman matching Mary's description had been spotted wandering the streets late at night, scaring children and adults alike. Some said she had been knocking on doors, whispering strange things to whoever answered. Others claimed she had been seen near the woods, her laughter echoing through the trees. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to ask around. That's when I met Mrs. Peterson, an elderly woman who lived near the bus stop where I'd first seen Mary. She invited me in, her wrinkled hands trembling as she poured us both a cup of tea. "You've seen her, haven't you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. "Who is she?" Mrs. Peterson sighed, her eyes misting over with sorrow. "Her name is Mary," she began. "She's sick. Years ago, she had a fever that left her skin different, pale and blotchy, almost like a porcelain doll with cracks. She was bullied horribly at school because of her appearance, and it broke her. She withdrew from everyone, stopped speaking to her family, and became obsessed with horror movies." My stomach tightened. "And now she thinks she's Samra," Mrs. Peterson finished, referring to the vengeful ghost from the ring. "That movie became her escape, her way of coping. Over time, she stopped being Mary. She became Samara. She truly believes she's a ghost now." The revelation sent chills down my spine. Mary wasn't a ghost or a monster. She was a broken human being who had found solace in identifying with a character from a horror film. It was heartbreaking. "Have you seen her recently?" I asked. Mrs. Peterson shook her head. "No. She's been missing for weeks. Her family is worried sick. They've called the police, but..." Her voice trailed off, the unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. Later that day, I went to the police station to report my encounter with Mary. The officers listened intently as I described her appearance and the unsettling conversation we'd had. They asked where I'd last seen her, but as I tried to recall the details, my mind was clouded with fragmented images. Her disfigured face, her haunting laughter, and the eerie glow of the streetlight that night. "She was at the bus stop near Main Street," I managed to say. "That's the last place I saw her." The officers thanked me and left to search for her. As I watched their patrol cars disappear into the distance, a chilling thought crossed my mind. What if they didn't find her in time? What if she hurt herself or someone else? That evening, I couldn't stop thinking about Mary. I tried to imagine what it must have been like for her, growing up with a face that drew ridicule and scorn. The isolation, the pain, the desperation to be anyone other than herself. It was no wonder she had clung to the identity of Samra. It gave her power in a world that had rendered her powerless. Hours passed, and sleep eluded me. Finally, I decided to take a walk, hoping the cool night air would clear my mind. As I stepped outside, the town was eerily quiet, the remnants of Halloween decorations swaying gently in the breeze. I found myself wandering toward the bus stop where I'd first seen Mary. When I arrived, the streetlight flickered, casting eerie shadows across the pavement. I stood there for a moment, half expecting her to appear out of the darkness. But the only sound was the rustling of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. Just as I was about to leave, I heard it. Soft, haunting laughter. My heart raced as I turned, scanning the shadows for any sign of her. "Mary?" I called out, my voice trembling. The laughter stopped abruptly, and for a moment there was silence. Then, from the darkness, she emerged. Her pale face seemed to glow in the dim light, and her wide eyes locked onto mine. "You came back," she said, her voice a mixture of surprise and amusement. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my nerves. "Mary, You need help. People are worried about you." She tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "I told you, I'm not Mary. Mary is gone. I'm Samra now." "No," I said firmly, taking a step closer. "You're not Samra. You're Mary. You're a person, not a ghost. You're not lost." Her eyes filled with tears, and for a brief moment, I saw a flicker of vulnerability. But then, just as quickly, it was gone. She turned and ran into the woods, her laughter echoing behind her. I called the police again, and they searched the area, but Mary was nowhere to be found. Days turned into weeks, and there was no sign of her. The town moved on, but I couldn't shake the memory of her haunting gaze and the sadness that lingered behind her eerie smile. Halloween is supposed to be a night of masks and make-believe, a time to embrace our fears knowing they're not real. But sometimes the line between costumes and reality blurs in the most horrifying ways. Mary wasn't a ghost or a monster. She was a reminder of how cruelty and isolation can break a person, leaving them trapped in a world of their own making. I still think about her sometimes, especially on Halloween nights. I wonder where she is, if she's safe, if she's found the help she so desperately needed. And I hope, with all my heart, that she's finally found peace.